Hey y'all, this is Carrie. I do YouTube videos sometimes, and I also sell crafts on an Etsy shop called Counting Every Color. Um, I usually only sell my resin work online because it is easier to ship. But essentially, it's like this is the easiest thing to get into, this flow art stuff. It's a lot of fun, and I've sold it quite a bit in my markets. So I thought I'd put together a video of how to do it. So you start with mixing a base paint color with that Floetrol stuff. So here I've already got a bottle ready to go. Blue acrylic paint and then Floetrol additive. Floetrol additive basically makes the paint more liquidy. It makes it possible for the paint to flow all over the place instead of sticking in one spot. And that is what we want with flow art, so that way the paint moves really well and can do cool things. I've got a couple of different colors here, and again, I've just mixed acrylic paint with that Floetrol additive, and I'm putting it on a recycled canvas. The canvas was just something somebody used, and they gave it to me afterwards, and were like, "Can you do anything with this?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." So here I am. I try not to do more than 3 colors with these things because it tends to get a little bit messy in terms of like the muddiness of the color, and I try to do colors in kind of the same family. And usually I'll do like at least 2 at a time because you'll see here in a second how I use one to create the other. Right now I'm just getting some paint and some colors on the canvases. This one is almost done here. Okay, so I've got a bunch of paint on this canvas. Not a lot on this one, but we're about to change that. And I'm doing these in the same color scheme so that I can pour one over the other. So essentially, you'll see that in just a second. But now that I've got all the paint on there that I want, just about, and I'll use up the bottle. And I think I'm probably going to stop using these bottles because it's nice to have them pre-mixed, but it's not nice to have to try and get all the last little bit of paint out of it. But I got these bottles from like the Dollar Tree, and I got the tray, the green tray from the Dollar Tree too. It was in like the $5 section. And here I'm picking up silicone. So I've done my paint and I've done my base, so everything flows nicely and goes all over the canvas. Now I'm adding silicone to make what we call cells in flow art. And basically, it's like a little bit of silicone that breaks up the paint and creates a pattern, kind of like a kaleidoscope. But it's not going to be visible until after it starts to dry, like after it starts to settle. Okay, so this is kind of hard to do one-handed, but I'm basically making the paint go all over the canvas. And at this point, this is where the artistry happens because there's really no wrong way to do it, right? I would say it is a very good idea to get all the corners if you possibly can. So that way it doesn't look patchy, but I have a base coat on of blue underneath this. I just reused some like house paint or whatever that I found at a thrift store. So it won't look bad if there's any spots, but I still prefer to have the corners covered to give a more cohesive look. And when the corners don't cover, because sometimes they don't, I just grab a little extra paint from the dribble off and I touch up the corners to help that paint flow better over those corners as it's drying. And you can see I picked up the first canvas and dumped it all over the second canvas with the same colors. So the pattern is different, but the colors are the same. And sometimes I'll go back and forth a few times if I like the way that's looking. I just pick it up, move it around till I like the way it looks. Get in the corners. And this Floetrol stuff takes a long time to dry because it is very liquidy. So I would say it's mostly dry to the touch after about 36 hours. But if you leave it in its own paint puddle, then it needs even longer to dry. So usually I'll leave it on this tray for like a few hours, and then when it's mostly set, I'll put it on cookie trays, wait for it to dry there, and then I move it one more time onto that table. So cookie trays, I keep them like this on a shoe rack. And I have a little trash can here. I always wear gloves because otherwise it gets way under your nails. And usually, I mean, you can do a base for these in any color. You saw in the beginning of this video, I was using a white base. So that's just a bit of white paint. The more white paint, the less visible the canvas underneath is going to be. But I don't need a lot of white paint because, again, I put a base coat on all my canvases. So now I'm adding Floetrol. Now this I will be doing every time because having the base pre-made is really nice. And I just got this little water bottle from like the Dollar Tree for the base. And those little squirt bottles too. I am refilling the squirt bottles here. Just since I already have them, you know. Okay, now I sped this part way up because it is probably the most annoying part, and you can do it before you start or afterwards. Before you start's probably easier. And we want it to be level because that will allow the paintings to dry evenly and it won't make all the paint slide off to one side. So leveling is very important. And here is kind of the final product. It'll look a variety of different ways depending on how you have manipulated it. And you see we got a bunch of cells from those silicones. I love those little details. I try to keep those. And I try to keep it relatively flat so that it won't all slide off to one side. And that is how I make flow art.